They found favor with the people. They praised God and found favor with all the people. I'm sure there was one person in Jerusalem who didn't like the Christians, but the general point, Luke's just making a point, they had a good reputation. That might sound really weird because of the twisted times that we live in America in 2021. It doesn't have to be weird. What would it take for outsiders, unbelievers, people who aren't part of the family of God, for Christians to find, for the church to find favor with the world? Let's bring it down to reality. For a local church, for this church, for that church, to find favor with the culture and the world. It doesn't have to be adversarial. Your entire stance and orientation of the church's orientation toward the world doesn't have to be adversarial all the time. I have never had an adversarial discussion about the gospel in my life. Some of you have, and I understand. My experience is it doesn't have to be adversarial. I've never had an adversarial conversation. Why when we think about the church and the world, do we immediately get, at least American evangelicals, almost automatically get this opinion of opposition, pointing weapons at each other, like some sort of Mexican standoff sort of thing? I think it's because of the way that we've been taught by evangelical culture and gatekeepers and big names in the American evangelical world, the way that we've been implicitly taught about how to think about the world and how to think about the church. We don't need to take a posture of fear and intimidation and rage toward the outside culture. And no matter what decade you look at in the 20th century, there is some boogeyman, some evil threat that the cultural evangelical gatekeepers will tell you are about to destroy America, destroy the world, destroy us all, destroy the church. And it's been a long time and the church is still here. Communism, the Equal Rights Amendment in the late 70s, Phyllis Schlafly and her fight against the Equal Rights Amendment, which never passed. Textbooks that teach whatever. Abortion, secularizing culture. Now critical race theory. After 9/11, it was Muslims. I was in churches where people started reading things on the internet about how the Antichrist is going to be Muslim after 9/11. There's always something to fear, some devious plot that's going to destroy the church and destroy America. Worries about George Soros and Bill Gates taking over the world. Worries about Anthony Fauci and the COVID vaccine. There's always something that the evangelical cultural gatekeepers want the church to be afraid of and get angry about. And so as that has happened over and over for decades by a lot of the same gatekeepers who are now in their 70s and 80s, the implicit teaching is that our stance toward the world should be fear and anger. Get angry, sort of like angry people hiding behind walls and peeking out enough to throw a few rocks and then hiding again and just keep popping back and forth and doing that for years and years. Our stance doesn't have to be that way. This community was preaching Jesus in a much bolder and comprehensive way than many of our churches do. And they were finding favor with all the people in Jerusalem. I think it's not because they watered down their message. I think it's because their stance, the way they framed themselves and the world was not a eternally combative stance. Guess what? The world does not accept God's values. Is that a surprise? Is anyone surprised? Of course it doesn't. They don't belong to God. They will not accept God's values. And the sky is blue. Is there anything else? Is this a surprise? Are either one of those a surprise? Of course the world's not going to accept God's standards and God's values. You can get angry. The church can get angry and write angry blog posts and do angry videos, or the church can tell people the good news. What should the church be doing? If the church's public face is little but perpetual outrage, hiding behind walls and shaking your fists and trying to fight culture wars with sound bites, a lot of them stolen from evangelical gatekeepers or people from the news, should we be surprised when people just, after a little while, they're just like, it's Christians, yeah, weirdos. Should we be surprised? Should we be, if that's the way we frame our interaction with the culture, should we be surprised that the world can look at churches and look at churches like the angry, crazy uncle at the Thanksgiving dinner? Oh, that's Uncle Larry. He's always like that. Just ignore him. Should we be surprised if that's the only thing the world sees of us, is being angry about something, no matter what it is, being angry about something and fighting and yelling and going on TV? And if that's all the world sees, then of course they're going to look at us and say, well, those are the conservative Christians. Yeah. We're like crazy Uncle Larry. Oh, that's Larry. That's Uncle Fred. Yeah, he's always like that. You're just dismissed out of hand. The reason why this church found favor with the culture is they had a faithful stance to Jesus, but they didn't frame everything as a war against the people who weren't part of their family. We can't make people love us, but we're making a mistake if we frame our public face to the world as deliberately adversarial, looking for something to get angry about, looking for a fight, anxious to become a victim, eager to be offended. You can't reach people with the gospel if all they think you do is hate them. If all they know of the church is they hate this, they hate that, it's going to be hard to reach people who the culture thinks we hate. And if you don't project a winsome and loving enough face with the truth, and you never find favor with the community will never know you exist, and you'll never be able to speak to anyone in the community. We're supposed to try, within the bounds of truth and faithfulness to Scripture, to build bridges with the community so we can speak truth to the community. We could stay together and just huddle together in these four walls and lament about the world and what 2021 holds and the Delta variant. We could do all that. Or we could go out with the resources and people we have. We could go out and spread the message in a winsome and loving way to the world in as many creative ways as we can. We can fight culture wars and get angry about the fact that the world doesn't like Jesus. Well, I hope that's not a spoiler alert, but it doesn't, so let's just get over it. Which one should we do? I think that the way they framed their interaction with the world was very different back then. That's why it's not that everyone loved them, it's that people respected them. They respected them and they found favor with all the people. That means something. And it's not because they watered down their message, I'm sure.